Good morning and welcome to this very special webinar on the occasion of World EV Day 2023. We are in the middle of a war, and I'm not talking about the conflict in Ukraine, but something far bigger than that. The war against climate change is reaching its definitive phase, and our actions in the course of the next 2 decades will decide whether we win or lose this. And lose we cannot, for we only have one Earth. And to win this, all hands need to be on the deck, and each individual, organization, and company will have to do their bit. One industry that is witnessing a complete shakeup in this phase is the mobility sector. Electrification is the future, and make no mistake, the changes are unprecedented. But it doesn't happen overnight, and some segments, which we often call the low-hanging fruit, will pave the way for others. In India, that segment is three-wheelers. Without much fanfare, this segment has already witnessed a healthy penetration of electricity. In fiscal 2023, more than 4 lakh electric three-wheelers were sold in the country, and the penetration in the overall segment was, and I kid you not, 52%. So we have not only reached the inflection point, but have actually gone beyond it, despite the fact that the largest three-wheeler ICE player is yet to get its act together in EVs. So who are the change makers here? It is the startups. And one of the more prominent and progressive companies that have emerged in this domain is Altigreen. For the uninitiated, it is a Bengaluru-based manufacturer with its own in-house research, design, and engineering capabilities, which enables it to produce technologically advanced three-wheeler electric vehicles in India, primarily for last-mile transportation segment. Founded by Dr. Amitabh Saran, who has a PhD in computer science from the University of California, a co-inventor of over 25 global patents, in a career span of over 3 decades, which included a stint at NASA. He is our own Mohan Bhargav from Swades. A discussion with him, and I have had quite a few, is always a humbling experience, for it makes you realize how little you know. But you don't have to take my word for it. Dr. Saran, I invite you to share your thoughts on this important day, sir.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Such a pleasure to be talking to you all today, World EV Day. We have reached, like Sumant mentioned, we've reached an inflection point in three-wheelers. You'll be surprised and happy to know that on a daily basis, about 40 crore people, 400 million people get access to a three-wheeler every day in our country. So it's a huge number. We decided to focus on that segment and electrify that segment first. Altigreen's journey, we probably, if you don't know already, we started almost a decade back, in fact, a little over that. We worked our way up, focusing a lot on technology stacks first, and then becoming an OEM ourselves. We decided to focus on three-wheelers, even though we had built technology for two-wheelers, four-wheelers, and farm equipment. Once again, three-wheelers very close to our heart. We are here to make change happen. And what kind of change are we talking about? Right? We did not approach this segment saying that we want to start by electrifying things. We were only looking at the number of people who are losing their lives because of poor air quality. And you'll be very, very surprised to know that the number is close to 2.6 million by the latest Lancet report that came out earlier this year. 2.6 million people lose their lives every year in our country because of poor air quality. And 25% of that is attributed to road transport. So 5 to 6 lakh people lose their lives every year in our country because of road transport related pollution. Again, enough studies have been done. We're not going into the detail of that, but the important thing is something needs to be done on a war footing. When 1 lakh people unfortunately lost their lives due to COVID, there was a national lockdown. I'm talking about 5 to 6 lakh people every year have happened and will continue if something is not done immediately. We decided to focus on three-wheelers because, like I said, the numbers are really big. And if we can make change happen at the bottom end of the pyramid, things are going to flow up. This is the emerging market. Here, things work bottom up, not top down like the Western economies. So our focus is on India and the emerging markets, and we are doing our best to ensure that we create products that will beat compete and beat in price and performance vehicles that are available, fossil fuel vehicles that are available in India. You're already seeing the difference that we're making. You've seen the kind of penetration that we have now. We're producing good vehicles, they're coming out. But the big realization on the way to get here is that we cannot do this alone. EVs open up an entire array of partnerships that we need to have. This is a growing and a very, very fast moving, aggressively changing, a very disruptive kind of industry. And when disruptions happen, you need to build an ecosystem of partners along with you. Today, it's all about partnerships. It's all about various kinds of people that will come together to create this EV ecosystem, whether it is the financiers, whether it is the people who are buying these vehicles, whether it is the charging infrastructure players. There's a whole ecosystem that has to be built to make this successful. And as a startup, it is important. As a new entrant in this sphere, it is important to make sure that we build this ecosystem. This cannot be done in isolation. I just can't create vehicles and say, "Kharid lo, bana diya." It has to be done together. So once again, without much further ado, I want to make sure that you guys enjoy it. We have a lovely audience today. Our very valued dealer partners, some of our investors, a lot of people from the ecosystem have joined us, a very large audience today. And I'm hoping that you will get a lot from each of the questions that Sumant is going to put, and each of the panelists, an amazing array of panelists. And Sumant, please go ahead and introduce them to us. I'm just really waiting to get started. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. You actually have begun to speak more like Mohan Bhargav. He lit bulbs one at a time. You're electrifying vehicles one at a time on the road. All the best to you. Now,
thank you so much.
Without much ado, let's get down to the main course of the event today, which is a panel discussion on the ecosystem for electrification in last mile mobility. It's a very widespread topic, and we have a panel of 5 people. 1 hour doesn't do justice, but I'll try to give you some things to ponder about. We have put together a team of experts from various domains who can throw light on all the different aspects of business. So it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Abhishek Dabas. He's the CEO of Gentari Green Mobility. He owns a fleet of 1,500 electric vehicles across 10 cities in India. We also have Mr. Visakh Sasikumar, the founder of Fine Mobility, a company incubated out of IIT Madras, which has already become India's leading vertically integrated EV ecosystem platform for logistics and commute. As much as engineers, financiers also play a very important role in any business. And Mr. Balamurugan, Director of Sales and in charge of CSR at Shriram Finance, brings his 3 decades of experience to this discussion. Welcome, sir. If it is electricity, it will need charging. And Mr. Pinkal Joshi, Head of Business Development at Tata Power, does just that. Mr. Joshi will ensure Tata Power becomes the Indian oil of the future, I hope. We also have Mr. Dimpy Suneja, Senior Associate at Rocky Mountain Institute, who has been part of Delhi EV Cell, and he will throw some light on the policy aspects of EVs in India. Welcome everybody. To set the ball rolling, let me come to you, Mr. Dabas. You have seen this sector grow and evolve. You are one of the companies who have deployed vehicles on the road. Please share your experience on what are the key takeaways and how are you seeing this segment grow?
Hi, thanks. Thanks for the invite. And so when we look at charging infra for last mile connectivity, right? We have been in this domain for close to 4 years now. Like early days when the first lot of vehicles was coming in, be it small L3 cargo vehicles or then the L5 cargo vehicles. So what we see, is the kind of three plays here, right? And before we say the charging infra or the charging need, one thing is any kind of charging, if it has to happen during the day for a vehicle when it's operating, is inconvenience. I think that's a broad perspective across any segment per se. You have to stop and charge. So it can either be fast charging or on the go charging, or it can be the battery is big enough to just do the day job and not required on the way charging. So obviously, how have we seen the market evolve? And because we don't fly these vehicles, today we have 100 plus customers or close to 150 who actually we give out these vehicles and they run. But we get all the data on how they're using it. So there obviously the cases where a person on a three-wheeler, you'll be surprised, can be running 150 to 200 kilometers a day. So of course, he will need that fast charging. I think, Visakh is one of those, heavy users of three-wheelers. But on the other end of the spectrum, when you say last mile, the density is going to go up, right? And the volumetric capacity will require lesser area to cover and drop those goods. So we are also seeing as low as 50, 60 kilometers runs, which are good enough for the entire day's job for some of the operators that we are seeing now. So from our perspective, I think when you look at commercially charging plays a big role. We have big hubs that we offer our customers to park and charge. A lot of times, if they have their own place, they prefer to do that. So I think today it's 70-30, where most of the people are rather charging at their own place, slow charge, overnight charging, and 30% of people are actually requiring fast charge. So let's see how this evolves as a play. Altigreen, of course, has all options for us to choose from. Let's see how this market evolves, and it's very commercially sensitive. Something which is costing roughly $15,000. You add fast charging cost to it. It's not as simple as somebody like an airport taxi operator who can bear that. He can make a lot of money. So this is very price sensitive market overall.
So is there still reluctance in some customers to shift to EVs, or is the fact that the lower cost of ownership, low cost of maintenance, all of that is well established now, and people are now on their own willing to adopt EVs?
For three-wheelers, I think the question is kind of settled with 52% new vehicle sales. Obviously, somebody has a vehicle which the EMI is paid for. We'll obviously try to sweat the asset, but eventually we'll move in that direction. Obviously, four-wheeler cargo, we've had very few options till now, Tata Ace being the primary one. But recently, Switch has also launched their vehicle, and a couple of other options will come, and they'll have their own use cases. So I don't see the reluctance as much. The economics are making sense today, and people are going for it.
Right. Visakh, let me bring you in. Are you surprised by the quick growth of electric vehicles in three-wheelers that we have seen over the last so many years? Everybody said that this is a low-hanging fruit, and this probably will be the segment which will get electrified first. But the similar thing is being said, was being said about two-wheelers as well, where there seems to be some reluctance, but three-wheelers has taken off. Are you surprised by this, and what are the key enablers that have helped this?
Not much surprise, because I'm in this industry for almost 10 years now. Okay, so when I started in 2013, when I wanted to build my first electric vehicle, there was no infra, nothing, right? So Ether was coming up. So there were a lot of ifs and buts in the industry, but nobody knew the answer of which segment is going to take off, right? So people were initially betting on the passenger side. Passenger side moved in, but trust was a bigger problem. So for you and me to buy an EV, it was a bigger problem on which vehicle to trust, whether it will give the same kind of life for 3 years, 5 years. Can we ride this vehicle? A lot of questions were there. But when we got into the commercial, we were also building vehicles earlier. So we had some experience with building the vehicles, and it was a tough sell during that time. So 2018-19, when we were trying to build the vehicles, it was a very tough sell in commercial segment to sell the vehicle, because none of them believed in EVs, right? So last 2-3 years, what we have seen is when we move to the service, EV as a service market, especially with the tech play, what we have understood is initial reluctance or the hindrance for the user to adopt this has completely gone away, right? People have started believing in EVs. And see, when we started using it, the first problem was who will own the vehicle. So no individual wanted to own the vehicle. So when we took the risk of owning the vehicle through a financier or whatever, the people got the experience to drive the EVs, right? So without risking their money. So for an IC engine vehicle, people have to buy the vehicle and then use it, and the EMI pressure is always on their head. But when we took that hit and then said, you come and drive and see if you can drive this better than an IC engine vehicle. Then you see, we made them believe that, okay, you can earn more with this. The cost of ownership can be lesser. So these 2-3 things that we have to initially put our own skin in the game and then make them believe it. Once that inflection point is done, then it was a rocket ship, right? So people started coming to us and say, we'll buy the vehicle also. So, but what we always believe in is a pure DCO model is a little difficult thing for the industry. Because if an individual tries to buy the vehicle, there are a lot of questions still in the mind. Say, what will they do with the vehicle after 5 years? What is the battery recycling issues? Second life cost of the vehicle. So second-hand cost of the vehicle. So we don't have most of the answers right now because we are in a very nascent, say, fast-growing pace that we have not completed the 5-year cycle of most of the vehicles, right? So I think companies like us or companies who wants to get into a larger fleet with tech will always run this entire industry along with the drivers, and the drivers will slowly start getting confidence with multiple types of vehicles, and slowly, see, you have to ensure that the entire industry shift towards EV. So if 50% and more becomes EV, then the driver sentiments will also change. So if it is 80-90% EV and 10%, 80-90% ICE and 10% EV, then people will always go with mass, right? So the mass has to change to EV. I think we are in the right way. We have seen and you have asked me, like, were you surprised with the growth for last year, several years? I would say I'm surprised in the last 7-8 months, right? The growth that we are able to see, and see, we are just waiting for the vehicles. Demand is there, drivers are there. So there's no dearth of any opportunity in this industry right now. I think it's the only thing we have to be very careful is the SLAs and the quality of products that we bring into the market. Because I have seen in 2013-14, there were an EV boom trying to come, but because of lead acid batteries and stuff, it had a lot of negative impact. And we took a lot of time to come out of that, and say even a small battery fire would bring in a lot of doubts to the drivers and the entire industry's mind.
Correct. Does it help that the legacy players are reluctant to come into this space, which opens up the window of opportunity for new companies like you and Altigreen? Is that an enabler that the biggies are still sitting on the fence?
Yeah, I would say startups like us don't have inertia. So we can do whatever we want, innovations on that segment, and slowly see at the end, every biggies will come into this sector for sure. So that's the time we should be in a position to coexist, or we should be the leader. So we should not go down. So that's not something that we worry about as a startup, because if we start something, there is always a first mover advantage. And some people say that first mover advantage is actually a disadvantage. But I think for a startup who is innovating continuously, there is no disadvantage in that.
The bold new world, and everybody is free to try whatever.
Yeah, so we build the world and everyone will join. So that's how startups work.
Correct. Mr. Balamurugan, let me bring you into the picture, because Visakh mentioned about the concerns on what will be the residual value of a vehicle 5 years down the line. What happens to if the battery needs to be replaced? That is a big question. And I think that is something that will be very relevant to anybody who is financing these vehicles. That, for example, if there is a default and you have to bring the vehicle back to your book, how much will be the value of that particular vehicle? What has been your experience? And were you also sitting on the fence as far as financing EVs was concerned at the start? And are you now completely sold on to the fact that EVs is the future and you are looking forward to financing more and more EVs? You are mute, sir. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Sumant. I can see a lot of market experts here. We are basically, let me introduce to Shriram Finance for the people who are just know Shriram as a commercial vehicle financer. To start with, we are a 50-year-old company, and the humble start of Shriram Finance has always been on financing those drivers who aspire to become owners. So our starting point was to lend people on used vehicle, and we continue to be one of the largest used vehicle financer in the country. Getting to your question is basically, again, introducing myself. I have been handling the small commercial vehicle for a very, very long period, since the evolution started from three-wheeler to four-wheeler, and again, bouncing back, the three-wheeler bouncing back in a big way, both in commercial vehicle and in passenger vehicle, thanks to the electric vehicle, which is catching up. Our concern as a financer is one, today, again, the large amount of vehicles which are sold, especially I'm talking about three-wheeler, is sold to a aggregator who has all the infrastructure, tech background, and are able to, manage those in a very proper way, I would put. But still, for an individual who comes to buy an electric vehicle, whether it is an L3, L5, is a different thing. But there is still a lot of reluctance. But I like the way you put it. For the last 7-8 months, there has been a spurt in all over. And because the government is also pushing very hard to become electrified, most of the vehicles which are commercial vehicle, when we see today only the three-wheeler. Four-wheeler, again, for the financer, it is not available for like us, who are individual financer, who are in the retail market. They don't finance four-wheel electric vehicles. So it's still the three-wheeler. But the three-wheeler, because of the initial negative approach on the lead batteries and other things, the financiers have taken a step back. You name any big financer, they are waiting. But I can ensure you and assure you that in the next leg or going forward, we have nothing to wait. We have to get on and follow those market leaders. Of course, the fintech has done a big change in getting into the financing area. I was hearing to the gentleman who just spoke before me, Visakh, as he said that they are the trendsetter, they fall into the taking into bigger risk. But for us, because we play with the public money, anything we enter and anything we do will have a very large impact on the whole. Because once we start doing anything, we cannot go back and reconcile. Number one. Number two, for us, the small ticket size funding is a very, very specialized business. So we have a lot of risk-taking partner, or we call it as a franchise for Shriram, who are a small financer who have taken our partnership, and they have an expert in dealing with the small ticket size. So the expertise is when you lend to such small customers who are having a daily earning business, and they don't have kind of, godfather sitting for them to help when it comes to paying the EMI. The crucial part is how do we counsel and what is the kind of EMI which he can pay, what he can save, and what he can basically hold on for covering his backup. When I say backup, any financer who comes to finance this three-wheeler, I'm talking about three-wheeler, has to finance the battery. So the tenure doesn't matter whether it is 3 years or 4 years. When you are asking about the resale price, I think the better person to answer would be the OEM who is manufacturing the three-wheeler. What kind of support they would give. For a financer, it is always a question, what if there is a repossession in between, whether we'll be able to realize our finance amount. So that question is still not clear, not answered, I would say. We always feel that we should not finance more than 70% of the value, and we should not give more than 18 to 20 months. So that is the reluctance or the block which is there in most of the area where I speak to my people, why they are not financing. These are the two major things. So once we are convinced and the conviction is there that the vehicle can live for 5 years plus, then the financing becomes easier. I think I answered your question. If not, I can repeat that.
I think spoken like a true banker, very measured and guarded, because obviously the risk will be on you if something goes wrong, and you will have to be saddled with the asset. But if somebody comes to you to buy, say, a CNG three-wheeler versus somebody who's coming to you with an EV three-wheeler, is the EV guy more under scrutiny even now? Or is it beginning to relax a bit given the fact that the number of EVs on the road have now become so high?
So, see, I'll tell you, because I was heading All India for the small commercial vehicle, three-wheeler and four-wheeler in a large way. We had a very big, population of driver come owner in our system even today. I can tell you, they are better knowledgeable than us who are financing. When they come with a decision of buying an electric vehicle, if my own customer wants to switch from a diesel or a petrol vehicle to an electric vehicle, or from a CNG to electric vehicle, or both, I don't think we have any say there. We just ask him whether what is the funds which he knows and whether he understands that business. Let me tell you, you can actually get better EMI or a larger portion of EMI compared to a diesel or a petrol vehicle, because the initial cost is more. After that, the operating cost is much lesser compared to a diesel or a petrol. I am not against any diesel or a petrol vehicle, but this is the reality of life. So the initial, hiccups of how the customer is going to enter, whether he will get a charging station, whether the route which he is going to be running has sufficient infra to support him, all that is a hitch even today. But the charging stations has to be it has to come in a big way, and financier like us, we are also ready to support those charging stations who require funding of 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, or 5 lakh, whatever. We are also looking at that. So any financing which we are going to do in future in electric vehicle would be an ecosystem funding. We have to fund the charging station, we have to fund the batteries which the vehicle requires, as well the vehicle. But we have to see whether the customer is ready also, because the initial amount is more than the other three-wheeler. The electric vehicle is always more because the battery cost is more. But going in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm sure the battery cost would come down, and it will be more convenient for an individual to get in, to buy and run it economically. Even today, we are geared up, but we are not in the electric vehicle segment in a big way. But we have this financer partners who are doing it already. I mean, I was there 3 days back in Jaipur, and I was happy to know that we are funding around 2 to 3 crores in a small place where we have 10-15 branches, electric vehicles we are funding. So that's a good news. I mean, people are getting into it, but there are very large unorganized player who needs to be, with the financiers worry is always, X versus Y. We are getting at 1,40,000 here. The vehicle cost is around, 2 lakh plus whatever. So that comparison for the customer is always there, which has to be addressed.
You made my job easier, sir, by talking about ecosystem financing and charging stations, because I wanted to bring Mr. Joshi into the picture.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, that is our idea, which we have been talking in the system.
Absolutely,
that it is not just to the vehicle, but it has to be the entire ecosystem. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Correct. It's a chicken and egg situation which we keep hearing, that how does a customer buy an electric vehicle if there is not a charging station at hand? And the charging station providers often say that, why should I put up a charging station if there are no vehicles on the road? How do you solve this conundrum of putting the chicken or the who came first? How are you addressing this? And I know that you are putting up charging stations not just for electric three-wheelers, but also two-wheelers, four-wheelers, etc., etc. Given that three-wheelers penetration is so high, are you seeing greater use of your charging stations for three-wheelers? What is your experience been, Mr. Joshi?
Yeah, hi, good morning. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Saran, for giving this opportunity. So I think from Tata Power side, we've been expanding our charging infrastructure across the country. As we speak, I think we are close to 4,300 plus charging points we have installed. I think we are there in close to 400 cities and on highways also. So I think on our perspective, if you look at very interesting things during the conversation also came out, whatever segments we operate or currently the larger infrastructure has been developed from our side is supporting the four-wheelers, but certain charging infrastructure support two-wheelers also. Some of the things which we observe or we have observed in three-wheelers so far is the requirement of a fast charging or maybe support towards fast charging of the vehicles. These are things which are getting addressed by some of the players, including Altigreen. We see a larger opportunity on three-wheelers on the charging infrastructure part on the last mile delivery segment. So what we understood is if you look at most of the corporates or a last mile delivery segment, including two-wheeler, three-wheeler, maybe in food delivery or grocery or e-commerce segment, we see a large amount of growth which has come in last 1.5 year. A lot of large corporates like Amazon, Flipkart, or Zomato in that sense, and some of the Tata Group companies like Big Basket and Chroma, they all have come up and started that converted that existing fleet vehicles towards the EV part of it. So charging always comes into picture when we talk about three-wheeler last mile delivery or last mile segment. And we are our perspective, if you look at, we see a larger opportunity in terms of a captive kind of a charging hub solution in the last mile segment, where rather than an individual vehicle, there are a lot of players who give fleets on contract by the financing thing and all those things and providing to the larger player. We see a large opportunity in terms of a captive charging hub infrastructure, where maybe around 20, 30, 50, 100 vehicles can charge at one point of time. And that solves a lot of purpose, in terms of increasing the throughput of the vehicle, mainly, economical as well as the environment benefit also for any corporates or in terms of the players also. So we see this particular segment has suddenly come up, and the kind of growth like what we see 500,000 sales of three-wheelers every month in three-wheeler segment alone in electric side. That's a significant number which is growing. And we see this as a constant rise segment. On charging infrastructure part, we have already evaluated a lot of opportunities in this segment, and we are closely working with some of the players also to support and address the need by creating large charging hub infrastructure. That we see is a good viable business model on the charging infrastructure part. And we are very, very keen to do tie-ups with large corporates. And one of the things which we clearly see is that significant proportion of expanded vehicles which are going to come in future. EV is a very well positioned vehicle in the fleet segment. So you see that any corporate, any companies who are trying to expand their fleet, they are preferring EV because of that sustainability agenda also. So while the vehicle grows, I think we as one of the largest charging infrastructure provider, we are ready and we are keen to partner and support in terms of expansion of charging infrastructure side of it.
So is the utilization of your charging network for three-wheelers significantly higher as compared to, say, four-wheelers or two-wheelers? That is one. And Mr. Balamurugan said that financiers seem to be very eager now to finance more and more on the ecosystem as much as they are probably on new vehicles. Have you also seen that if you need to finance setting up any charging, it is now easier to get finance in that sense? And bankers are more ready to welcome you inside their branches?
No, absolutely. I agree with the point which he has made in terms of entire ecosystem funding or ecosystem financing. Because, normally whenever the first question comes is how the charging will happen. So coming back to your question, yes, in the fleet or a last mile segment, we see a significant, a good utilization pattern. Very different than an individual passenger vehicle segment, which we see in four-wheeler. This segment, because the vehicles are always on the run, 80 to 100 kilometers a day, typically what the vehicles run, the utilization of charging infrastructure is always going to be good, provided it is a captive infrastructure rather than a public charging infrastructure. If it is in captive and dedicated for specific players, the utilization is never a concern. And believe me, on a charging point, operator side of point of view, if the utilization is good, I think most of the CPOs are ready to invest. That's
Right,
the way we see.
So it looks like the charging conundrum is also getting solved faster in three-wheelers than anywhere else. Now, the other bit is obviously electric three-wheelers cost more from the outset compared to an ICE three-wheeler, and subsidies play a very important role. So I would like to bring Mr. Suneja in because Delhi came up with a very progressive EV policy, which became in a way the template for other states to follow. What are your views? Because right now we are getting very contrasting kind of update from market on FAME 2, whether be it lowering of subsidy, be it the whole debate on how long can we support subsidy from a government standpoint. What is your view? Do you think it is feasible to have subsidy continue for a long time? And if not, how should it be watered down going forward?
Perfect. Thank you. It's a question that I think a lot of us debate with, and this is something that in internal conversations with a lot of think tanks and talking to a lot of industry, I mean, kind of comes up. But let me start by taking a step back. And since you mentioned about Delhi, the primary aspect for any policy to succeed at a regional level or even at a national level, I think the two things that play a key role is that we are talking about a sunrise industry, as the other panelists referred to. The technology is evolving at a pace that the policy usually lose track of and becomes a hindrance in most cases. So I mean, no particular examples here, but from a point where you have leasing businesses and financing businesses growing at the scale as they are, or even charging needs of the users that are so diverse based on the requirements of the user, it's important that the policy at any level should act as a facilitator rather than a deterrent in terms of EV adoption. One, this is usually easy to deal with, but something that we haven't seen happening a lot, at least at the national, at the state levels, is the fact that this process has to be a continuous consultative process and not really a rigid 3-year, 5-year policy that kind of deals with the situation. The second thing is largely about implementation. There has to be dedicated funding, a team of people who are supporting. There has to be day in, day out monitoring and evaluation of the policy, which would actually mean that what the policy intends. So, I mean, the gap between the intent and the impact essentially goes shorter and shorter. With that said, and those two levers essentially are a good fulcrum to move to your question on FAME. The fact is that at least for the initial years, I think all of us would agree to this, that incentives would play a key role. The first movers across different vehicle segments who were climate conscious, who were environment conscious, who signed up for an electric vehicle, or the ones who wanted to own a new technology product, that population is kind of saturated at this point. We have a huge population that's sitting on the fence, deciding if they should go ahead with an electric vehicle or a conventional vehicle. And all the things that we talked about from a service module perspective, as Visakh was talking about, from a charging perspective, from an application perspective, or from a financing perspective, all of these essentially are those pillars that make that fence, as I'm talking about. With all of this said, as long as these levers, the various levers of the ecosystem come together and play a role, of course, battery recycling coming into this as well, for till that point, I think it's important to have incentives rolling. Let's also talk about what incentives do and how incentives should be designed, and the larger conversation about incentives. So, I mean, we talked about the high capital cost of an electric vehicle, or the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle being positive than a conventional vehicle. I think incentives do induce that TCO. At this point, without the incentives, for a few segments, for a few use cases within those vehicle segments, the total cost of ownership for the owner would not make sense. This would be far greater a challenge for tier 2, tier 3 cities. Tier 1 cities probable, it's possible that, and I'm guessing that Mr. Joshi would sort of align with me. Tier 1 cities have, to an extent, the interest of a lot of CPOs and also distribution companies that have been privatized so far to have more charging infrastructure. For tier 2 and tier 3 city, that continues to be a problem. So I think, I mean, all in all, what I'm trying to say is that if at all national policies or state policies are looking at phasing out, tapering down incentives or lowering down incentives on electric vehicles, I think there are two key aspects to focus on. The first thing is that the total cost of ownership for the user should make sense. And the other pillars of this ecosystem, as we just talked about, have to be robust enough to provide that support and confidence to the user that without the incentive also, the operations of the vehicle, the flying of the vehicle or general usage of the vehicle would be far more smoother in comparison to a conventional vehicle.
So from a policymaker's standpoint, when you look at a particular segment like electric three-wheelers, where electrification has happened at over 50% on a month-on-month basis, is that an indication that the industry is now on its own and there is enough economies of scale, so there is possibly a need to lower incentives? Or do you look at other factors as well and decide that, okay, the sales might be very high, but there is still requirement of incentives and possibly the sales are high because of the incentives, and so there needs to be continued for some more time?
Perfect. So I'll break apart this, this statement and sort of deal it with two different lenses. So the first factor is that, yes, it's really promising to see that the adoption of specifically the three-wheeler segment has been promising across different cities to a point, and also city administrations or state administration have been taking a lot of pain in terms of electrifying this sector. So much so that cities like Pune and hopefully Pimpri-Chinchwad soon also have an additional incentive that they have prescribed for adopting electric two-wheelers and electric three-wheelers. And if I'm not mistaken, the Amritsar Municipal Corporation also has a similar policy. So over and above national policy, which is the same, then the state policy, and then an incentive at the city level, I think that's something that shows a lot of confidence that governments across the geography have a lot of interest in the three-wheeler segment. The other thing in terms of deciding if the incentives have to be tapered down or at what point this needs to sort of go down is deciding it from the fact that so far electric mobility, like any other sunrise businesses, have been looked at just as an individual technology. It's kind of looked as a silo. At this point, evolved geographies, for instance, Delhi or Maharashtra, Karnataka to an extent, and a lot of other states right now, and cities particularly, which are interested in increasing electric vehicle adoption, are looking at it from a perspective where other policies are in line with the electric mobility ambition of the city. With that said, I mean, in a particular example, let's put it this way, that a government should decide to lower down the incentive on an electric vehicle if the utilization of the asset on the ground is maximized. And this can be done through leasing companies like, in the market at this point, and also tying up with mass transit models like metros, for instance, or bus transits, for instance, where aggregators or individual owners are allowed to ply their vehicles, which guarantee them the trips that they would require to make the maximized profit. So it's not really a magic number that any researcher or any OEM for that matter, or even a government can come up with to say that this would be that critical mass beyond which we should not support. We have just reached an inflection point where we have seen brilliant adoption that's happening in the last 1 year. I sincerely feel that this should continue for at least a few more months, if not years, to see if this is how this trend plays out for the next segment of the market. Given that we have new players entering the market and promising a product that satisfy consumer needs.
Interesting that you put it few more months and not years. So I would like to bring in, I would actually like this question to go around across other panelists as well, Visakh and Abhishek. How comfortable are you with the idea of subsidies going down henceforth? Do you think the industry is ready? And if not, when do you think the industry will be ready? Because subsidies need to go at some point in time.
So can I start?
Okay. So I'll go first.
Abhishek.
I come with a very, very biased, historical experience. So in solar, subsidies killed the residential market, whereas commercial industrial segment boomed, because it's not just the money, it's about the flow of money, right? And the ever-changing norms and those, they come until the government is very clear, which it's been in EVs, thankfully. The OEMs have the capacity, and all those incentive schemes are there, which have been working very well. But having said that, we have to eventually stand on our feet. The economics are good. The cost, as the vehicle quality gets more established, the interest rates will come down. The secondary value market will be very well established. And you can imagine somebody taking in, a three-wheeler on a SBI loan at, single-digit numbers. So they will, then that's where I think it gets sorted. Subsidies, as long as the flow, are very good incentives, but there should be a very clear view. So what I don't like is we don't know. Like Dimpy said, few months or a year. Plus, you put a 5-year plan. This is how it will go down, and we can plan accordingly. No, it's going to be a surprise. Okay, now trucks or buses, right? So that's something that's unfair for the industry. Yeah, Visakh.
Visakh,
Yeah.
your turn, but I must just add that even the government doesn't know whether you will survive 5 years or not. So it's very difficult to put a policy which stays for 5 years. But that aside,
so there's precedents. There are precedents when in solar. Australia had a very clear incentive scheme. First guy would, let's say, get this much subsidy and he'll taper down, right? So you push people forward. You'll get 40% subsidy this year. Next year it's 30. Imagine the curve on demand.
Right. Visakh, your comments.
So I would say I'm ready to take down if the subsidy goes out today. We are in a good position, because see, our thought process and what we were thinking was utilize the vehicle for 20 hours. That's why I think we are one of the largest fast charging fleets in India. We don't have slow charging vehicles at all. So we have proven in certain cases that we can run the vehicles for 20 hours and make more margins, which logistics industry has never seen. So we don't want to be connected with subsidy at all, because we have seen that happening practically in two-wheelers. The 90,000 rupee vehicle we were getting suddenly became 1.2 lakh, and there is no supply also because of some regulation issues and all, right? So 1.2 lakh pay, one shift vehicle doesn't make sense for a fleet like us. So that's when we decided that on three-wheeler, we are only going with fast charging, and we are now expanding only on three-wheelers with a two-shift operations, where we are sure that we are not dependent on the subsidies, and that now as we are getting the vehicles, we are getting one of the highest rates of interest. So we are very much positive that this will come down. As we scale up, the rates will come down. So that is the only thing that we are looking at. We scale up and the rates come down, get a good financing, become on par with ICE vehicles. But subsidies, we have never thought about it at all till now. I think you'll be hearing this for the first time, because EVs, everyone was looking only
for subsidies. Yes.
So it was an eye-opener for us also, that I think someone in the panel touched upon the utilization piece. You get the utilization to the maximum you can. See, we are looking at from the standpoint of, if 15 minutes is the time available for charging, can we do 20 hours continuously on every vehicle that we have? So then there is no point of subsidies, or there is no point of at 15 to 18% IRR if we are able to make margins. at 10-12%, you will definitely make better.
Great, shots fired. We don't need subsidies, but Mr. Balamurugan, we need lower interest rates. What are you doing about this?
Again, I will answer the same thing. If we are going to be funding to individual or the driver come owner, then the game is different, because the risk component is from the day one until the end of the agreement of the, I'm talking from the financer point of view. So the interest rate is the last thing which the customer wants. He is not bothered whether you're charging him 18 or 24. What he wants is, whenever he needs money, it should be provided. If there is a requirement of a battery, change of battery, the financer should be coming forward to give. And let me tell you, this is not for electric vehicle. We have the entire ecosystem available for other vehicles also. Not for three-wheeler, for bigger vehicles. We also fund fuel. If you just come across any of our customer, whatever he requires, whether he requires a tire replacement, whether he requires a daily basis में fuel, it has already been provided. Whether it is battery, repair charges, everything is already there. We have all the system in place. So, as a financer, as Shriram Finance, we don't compete in the market. We don't have any competition, because we don't go and compete for new vehicle, saying that chalo 17% IRR de raha hu, 15 de raha hu. We are not in the game. And actually, we don't have any DSA. All our customers are directly brought by our own employees. We have almost 1 lakh employee in the entire Shriram group, out of which 70,000 employees in there for Shriram Finance Limited. Okay, right from two-wheeler to commercial vehicle to construction equipment, our entire business model is direct business. We don't even give any kickback. Sorry.
So what is the delta between the rate of finance for an electric ICE vehicle? For a ICE three-wheeler versus an electric three-wheeler?
I don't think there should be any difference, boss. The technology difference is there. The funding amount goes up automatically. In fact, I told you earlier also, the earning capacity of an electric vehicle goes up, because there is no other maintenance charge except for the battery. And absolutely, it has got 3 things: a controller, a battery, and the vehicle. So the other maintenance is 0. So, I mean, I'm not a technically sound guy, but I've been in this industry for 31 years. And if I understand the small commercial vehicle business, IRR doesn't matter at all. I'll repeat that. Only thing matters is, whenever he needs anything, should be provided instantly without much hassle. I'm not talking about, people who have an aggregator business. It's a different ball game. There you require all other strategies.
Yeah. I know. Visakh, do you agree that IRR doesn't matter at all?
IRR is the only thing mattering for our business.
Yeah.
Right?
So we can always have a difference of opinion, but I'm coming from where the customer who's an individual operator, for him doesn't matter. For him matters is whether he can earn the EMI and save the money for running his own house. That is his priority. But we will not be going to charge him 50% IRR. Whatever is the market availability, because of the risk component, the IRR would be slightly more than the marketplace. 2% more than you and me, who will be easily getting it. That's all. That's going to be the difference.
But I think there is a difference between ICE vehicle IRR and electric vehicle IRR right now in the market.
Maybe, but we don't differentiate that. We don't differentiate that.
That is because mostly you might be dealing with the individual guys.
I'll tell you, I have met hundreds of three-wheeler manufacturers. Let me make it very clear. 100. Okay. You know what they say? We will buy back. We'll give you all support. Please. All that is not there, because I worked with Piaggio also. I'm just telling the name. Way back when they wanted to sell three-wheeler, they were also ready to give us buyback. They were also ready to give us, loss pool. But we don't get into that game of it. We know electric vehicle is the future, and the customer should be comfortably buying that. IRR, whether it is 18 or 24, for a customer who is got a very less credit ability to get from the bank, for him it doesn't matter. For For a fleet operator, yes, I agree. Even
Understood.
0.5% will matter.
Yeah, understood.
Good that we came to a consensus in such a short time. We are running out of time actually, but I wanted to.
But very interesting, sir. Let me tell you, I have one question for the Tata charging person. Whether
Right.
the charging, because I am getting into the game of going to finance those charging stations. We are already doing a survey on that. But whether it will be given to individuals who are interested, who has a space to put up a setup, whether they will be encouraging the individuals or whether it will be all big OEMs like Indian Oil, HPCL, IOCL who will be taking the lead. I mean, anybody can answer this question because I am very much interested in knowing this.
Mr. Joshi, question directly for you.
No, absolutely. I think I understood. So I'll tell you, there are two different segments which we talk about. If we talk about individual segment, be it in car or, be it in three-wheeler or be it in two-wheeler also, primarily what we have seen is it is more of a slow charging, which is the requirement. But if you look at last mile delivery partner, where I think Visakh has already told, it is all about a utilization game, on a charging infrastructure side. If a vehicle can run for more number of hours, do more number of shifts, a fast charging is a perfect solution. And anything to do with higher utilization, I think financing also becomes a very strong business case when you look at a higher IRR perspective. So my point is, my answer is very clear. If you're looking at a last mile delivery partner, I think financing is a brilliant opportunity where there is a clear cut utilization game is in. There is a constant growth in terms of utilization is there. It makes a lot of sense. On an individual side, it is still, even we see in four-wheelers also, because we have developed a large infrastructure across the country. We still see that 85 to 90% of the charging customers do on individual cars are only at home. So it's only an opportunity or a boost charging which is required when they go out on certain times. It is hardly 10 to 15%. So that science fits well. The only way we understand, and we have been investing and will keep on investing in four-wheeler, is because we see this particular segment is going to exponentially rise in next 3 to 4 years. And as all are looking at all kind of data points, we also see that 30% of the conversion of entire four-wheeler space is going to convert it into EV. So, that segment will rise to a level where we have close to around 40 lakh vehicles, four-wheelers on the road by 2030. So we will see a large amount of utilization will happen. But coming back to again and again, individual financing is a very, very different perspective. But yes, for a last mile delivery partner as an ecosystem, the financing works well.
So we have received a few questions. They are more or less very similar in nature, but I'll probably put them together into one or two or maybe three questions. One of them is charging versus swapping. This is one topic we did not speak about much. And I think in electric three-wheelers or electric four-wheelers as in from a freight perspective, swapping becomes one of the options. There are companies who are trying it out. I would like to have views from everybody here. What do you believe is the right way to go forward, or what is the balanced way to go forward between charging and swapping? The other is about the longevity of batteries itself. And that is coming across as one of the pain points for anybody who wants to get into electric three-wheelers, that how long will the battery effectively last? And what happens when the battery goes dead, say 5 years or 6 years down the line? What is the kind of assurance that manufacturers are willing to give? Or even from a policy perspective, where Mr. Suneja can come in, that if somebody is buying into an electric three-wheeler and the battery goes dead in 5 years, will the government formulate a policy where the batteries can be taken back and you can, something very similar to scrappage policy, for example? Is that in the works and can that be worked upon? These two questions, beginning with maybe Abhishek and Visakh, and then everybody else can have their views. Charging versus swapping and battery longevity.
So charging versus swapping, very quickly, swapping is working in smaller category two-wheelers or e-rickshaws. It's in a mom and pop store kind of an way where the penetration is higher, not in a organized battery swapping infra, because the inconvenience part and the queuing becomes a challenge. As you look at bigger, and especially sticking to last mile logistics, I think charging makes sense when you're increasing utilization, like Finn is doing, or just a big enough battery to run through the day, running 60-100 kilometers. That's that's where I come from. On life, for example, as Gentari, we finance these assets on subscription basis, basically very flexible. So we always ask OEMs to give us more warranties, so reduce our product risk, so that we can finance that tenure. So if an OEM is giving 3-year warranty or 5-year warranty, 7-year warranty, my subscription cost is like a loan, right? 3-year EMI is more than a 5-year EMI. So that's where they should put in their they should put skin in the game. They know their product, and and they should, and they have the data, right? They don't share all the data to us. I wish they would, but they know their data, and if they're confident, we can actually make it very affordable for people.
Vishakh.
In charging versus swapping, the only thing I would say is you can't be in two sides. You have to take one side, and we have taken the fast charging side. Especially for a logistics company like us, for us to get a better swapping partner itself is difficult, because we feel that swapping infra itself is little costly compared to a fast charging network right now. Even if you look at a 15 kilowatt DC 001 network, and 15 minutes doesn't hurt as much. There is a lot of tech that needs to be streamlined in swapping also, especially in 3-wheeler and 4-wheeler segment. So 2-wheeler, I think it is working out good, but 3-wheeler, we don't get into swapping at all. So we focus on one particular fast charging tech, and then we just go big behind it. So the second part where we are talking about I forgot the second question. Can you just remind me of the
question was on battery longevity?
So the battery life, it's the 5-year battery life that we were talking about. So where we see it as, in 5-year, we have to ensure that the vehicle is utilized such that the entire profit is made from that 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, we wanted to look at whether it can go to a second life. Or we are actually bringing in companies who are into recycling of batteries into a platform where we can get some money out of it. At the end, after everything, so we need to have a trust on the battery maker, who is going to give us the this thing that, okay, we have done this many testings. And for us, like most of the companies we work with, we have worked with them for long term, from the lab side to the fleet. So we have understood what the kind of testings they have done, what are the certificates they have. So these are only the indicators for us, but we cannot predict what will happen in the next 5 years. So some kind of some of the battery manufacturers can give actually 8 years life, but they give only 5 years out, right? So because they keep their kind of buffer.
Conservative,
yeah. So similar to that, even if you look at the manufacturers, OEMs also, the vehicle manufacturers also keep the buffer. Financiers take that buffer and then only give it to us. So basically, we know that there are some buffers that all of you have kept that will keep us safe.
Right. Mr. Joshi, you are into charging. We are talking about also swapping. Is that something that you keep a very keen eye on how the trends are developing, or is that not a threat at all?
I think 2-wheeler, it's a quick turnaround. I think it is a highly potential part of it. 3-wheeler, I think battery cost is something which, if reaches to a certain level, then it becomes a scalable model. Currently, I believe it's a nascent level, very initial level, but it will come up once the battery cost goes a little more sustainable kind of thing. That is one. And on the battery longevity, I still believe that I think battery second life is something which is a different domain of area where a lot of companies are working. Once that more clarity comes, I think the math will purely be worked out. But I strongly believe, I think 1 or 2 years, or maybe 2 to 3 years, we'll have more clarity in terms of battery second life technology part, and a lot of companies are working. So I think that will give us more clear direction, but it is kind of positive. Outlook is very positive.
Mr. Suneja, I would assume the government would want to be technology agnostic, be it charging, be it swapping, whatever works for any customer. But what about batteries? Because end of the day, batteries is what runs an EV. What happens to the battery after 5 years? Is the government looking at that? And what are the solutions that the government can offer?
So I'll also try and comment on the previous question. I know we're running a little behind time, but in terms of, so exactly how you pointed out, from a government perspective, charging or fast charging, or even battery swapping doesn't really sort of bifurcate, because all of these models are playing out. Specifically for Delhi and a few other geographies, it seems that battery swapping has been playing out really well, even in the three-wheeler segment, and it seems promising. At this point, I think from a policy perspective, again, the same point that I was talking about is that it has to be a facilitator rather than a deterrent in terms of evolving a new product. However, battery swapping per se, in my personal opinion, has a lot of challenges that, in a way, charging as a business has kind of overcome in the last couple of years for sure. Now comes to the part of battery. I think what's important to look at it right now is that, again, this goes back to the same point that most of us were saying in different ways. We are working as an ecosystem. So we have battery recyclers, refurbishers, second life battery products. I mean, they're growing by the size at this point. The only challenge with such players at this point is that they're all lab grown. It's not really something that's gone into a commercial business yet. We have a fintech company based in Bangalore that's tied up with Loham to supply their products, and they have been doing this pretty well. But the numbers and the volumes that we're talking about are pretty small. At this point, from a policy perspective, here are the two challenges. One, we don't know which way to go for, or what should be recommended, because the kind of batteries that we're dealing with in India, it's not the same that was dealt with any other Western counterparts, or even those states and geographies that have done brilliantly well in terms of EV adoption, and they do have scrap vehicles going about. But something that I mean, this is kind of food for thought. This is something for if people would like to comment on. I sincerely believe that there is a huge potential for second life of battery, because again, no brainer, the battery still has some bit of efficiency after it's not sort of suitable for a vehicle that has to go in and out of charge every single day. You have, as we are discussing aspects such as managed charging. We are discussing aspects such as shaving off the peak loads when the peak demand in summers for a country like India goes off. And you're talking about battery storage as a concept, and this is becoming more and more acceptable. This is similar on the lines as vehicle to grid was talked about 5 years ago, but this is kind of becoming a reality in Western countries, and we do know that this is something that's been almost in works, at least in Canada and US at this point. We do have pilots that are probably being funded right now that kind of works on similar models to sort of take care of or shaving these peak loads, and usage of these batteries become more and more promising. With that said, I think at this point, while the policy can only do limited, however, what should be looked at in very near future actually should be something of an extended producer responsibility, where collaborations are promoted rather than the OEMs being forced to vertically integrate, buying back these batteries or recycling or refurbishing these batteries, instead of having different players in the markets that have a core competency of actually being able to recycle and refurbish these batteries very well, which are supported by collection centers of sorts, along with a kind of a check on that irregulated market that's have flourished for batteries, for electronic waste, for all this while.
Thank you. I think tech has the answer to all the problems that we are facing, and we should bank on engineers and technocrats like Dr. Saran and others to give us the solutions. We are absolutely run out of time, but Mr. Balamurugan, one last question. I would have loved to ask this question to everybody else, but this question is about why 3 wheels when you can have 4? So why 3 wheels when you can have 4? There are electric 4 small Tata Ace electric also coming into the picture. And so the age-old debate on what is the utility of 3-wheelers when you can have smaller 4-wheelers as well. What is your take? Do you think 3-wheelers have a space, and 4-wheelers, while they can stay, they have a different role to play?
I'll take this answer because I think 4-wheeler nationally known products are with electric vehicles are not available for individuals, especially when you're talking about Tata Ace. It is not available for you and me. It's only available for the aggregators. If I want to buy a four-wheel from Tata Ace, they will not give you. The current situation is that. Second, three-wheeler is a more all-terrain vehicle. If you go to any villages, any kind of roads, whatever it is still easily adaptable, and the cost-wise also, it is very convenient for an individual to buy and use it. And when we are talking about last mile connectivity, it is not going to be always the aggregators who are going to pull the string and make this happen. It is going to be finally the individual who can afford to buy and afford to run it economically. So the three-wheeler, as I told you, in between, if you see 3 years behind the statistics of three-wheeler sale, whether it is, I'm especially talking about the commercial vehicle, it was going down. Every manufacturer were, only selling passenger vehicle, right? Today, because of the electric vehicle, that has again come to life. The three-wheeler has come to life, and each driver is becoming an entrepreneur. He is not just driving a three-wheeler, he is also managing his finances, his insurance, etc., etc. So the entrepreneurship in India is there in every individual. And it starts with commercial vehicle. When you say it starts with three-wheeler. And I feel the three-wheeler market will still be there for the next 10 years till the four-wheeler becomes more easily available and economically viable.
Right. We will probably wait for at least maybe two odd minutes for any questions from the audience. You can type in your questions on the chat box and we will take it up. Keep it crisp.
I have one. I was very happy to see the panelists on this, and a lot of learning happens. So when we can, if somebody can initiate and we can meet up and put this in a solid way, because I meet a lot of financiers on a regular basis. Even yesterday I met few of them in Ashok Leyland 75th year celebration. I was asking the same question because Nitin Gadkari was there. We were all talking about electric vehicle and hydrogen and all that. But I was asking the other friends among whom I've been meeting. They were also saying, no, Bala, we are not doing electric vehicle because of, maybe they're down the team is not being appraised about the development happening and about the evolution happening in the ground, right? So the team which is there available, this panelist who can, educate people. I don't know how it can happen, but that will change the entire block which the financer, because the financer has to play a major role, coming and extending and taking the so-called risk. I would not say it is risk, but if it was 2 years back, I would still say it is risk. But today it is all been, the tech has brought in so much of technology changes, which has made everything available easily. So also the point which Mr. Suneja discussed about the reusable of batteries. Okay, I'm also doing a lot of, I have interest in that. So the reusable batteries are going to be a big business. So these vehicles, the battery which is going to be removed from here need not come back as a battery for the vehicle. It can go as some other battery in some other sector. So there is a value for it, right? And so the new battery purchase will be minus the value of those battery which is going to be. So we need to develop, and it has to be the manufacturer. It cannot be given it to individual who will again misuse the entire thing. So I really take this point from Visakh and Mr. Suneja. So how many people in this industry who are financiers knows about this is a question. So there's a lot of learning and a lot of information which needs to be properly feeded, which somebody can initiate that can change the entire thing. Maybe the government can initiate and call upon certain people who are involved on a daily basis. So that would change the whole thing. From my side, for Shriram, I would definitely take this information and put it in a nutshell, or somebody can do that and send it, would be very great. Also, we would like to visit some of the logistic company which is doing so well. Like Visakh is saying that 20 hours of running, I am amazed, really. With 15 minutes of charging, this is what a financer needs. This is what information is needed for a financer to go all out to go and finance.
Right. Very, very interesting. I think Visakh and Abhishek, you should get in touch with Mr. Balamurugan and take him around, make him see.
Also on charging.
Also
Yes, sir. Yes. Charging is another area. So I asked this question. See, there are a lot of people who say, I have place, I have workshop. Can I put a charging station? Will somebody help me? Will somebody fund me? We are ready to fund because we know those customers. A lot of people on the highway. See, today, private car may not be using it because they have the fear of taking the vehicle far away. Let me tell you, it is not that they don't need charging. Today, they don't take their private car. They calculate everything and take. But if there is an availability of charging stations in places where they can charge easily, fast charge or slow charge, I don't know the technology, they will definitely have a prosperity for car. But for commercial vehicle, definitely there is a big requirement and a need. I mean, I was there in another day in a Dabas where I saw, there's a charging station. I was so happy. Like people are, in India, everybody is an entrepreneur. They'll definitely get on their own way to do it. But there should be availability of doing things.
We are actually inundated with questions now. I don't know.
I mean, it's a very interesting session. Actually, I was thinking, what am I going to talk? Because I don't know anything about electric vehicle. I'm just a financier and not doing much of electric vehicle finance, actually speaking. But yes, to know that, there are so many people who are doing so well. So it's very, very interesting to learn so many things. I'll put my input to all my senior who are into actual operation. I don't do I deal only with the OEM, but I'll give this feedback.
Great. I'll just check. Nivedita is, I think, waiting in the wings to take over. Do we have time to at least take a couple of questions, or do we need to wrap up now?
I think we can maybe take one more question, sir. I think.
One more question. Okay. So, Prabhu Seturaman,
We'll take questions.
Has a question on are DCO operators' adoption of EVs higher than aggregators or vice versa?
I would take that.
Yeah, Visakh.
Yeah, so I think this is a question that every investor asks us. Right. So if DCO guys start buying the vehicles, what will you do? Right. So what we have seen is, including some of the bigger companies like Porter and all. So they have also realized that a DCO in EV three-wheeler is much far ahead. As in, it is not on the percentage. It will take some time to come in because one, financing is not yet there. People like us needs to bring in trust to the market. So aggregation is required, and at the end, demand, for example, an Amazon or a Flipkart doesn't want to work with multiple individual owners. So instead of it, they want to hand over the entire logistics to people like us. So that's where even if DCOs will come in, they will come get aggregated to the fleet operators. So that's how the industry will pan out. But right now, even the buying of vehicles from DCOs itself is lower compared to the on-take that we do as a fleet operator. So we do bulk buying from the OEMs, whereas DCOs are a little bit on the sidelines, but it will come up. And then once it comes up, then it will become easier for us because for us, it's better if a driver takes the liability, right? So
I think
for financiers, it is the other way. I know most of the financiers would say you take the liability, right? So it's a chicken and egg problem, but we feel that for us, it's not about liability. For us, it is about control on the vehicle and the overall, say, operations so that we can utilize the vehicle more. That's the only motive that we have in the industry.
I think
I have
OEMs
another question, but Abhishek, if you want to say something.
Yeah. So Nivedita is the right person to answer that question. Are they selling more to fleets or DCOs? Or rather, it's a distribution part. The old incumbents have.
So fast charging it is to us. They're selling the.
I know. But overall, if you look at, let's say, the other, older OEMs with electric vehicles, where we know that the fleets may be not accepting the vehicles that much, but the numbers on Vahan dashboard show that their distribution network is deep and they are selling to DCOs. So I think it depends on use case in the vehicle and, that is. Eventually, DCOs will overtake Mr. Murugan and Balamurugan, my bad. And then the other financiers will be financing cheaper. So, and the product risk basically, which is the main concern for an individual. See, they're very smart. I think, who was saying this in the panel, they're super smart, these drivers, right? They understand all the economics. This Uber guy will know that, why you don't go EV is because, I'll save a lot of money, but when the battery replacement comes, I'll have to pay all of it back.
Correct.
So once he knows that answer, that's not going to be the case. They will lap it up. So that's the main concern there. Yeah, and hence the answer is more fleets than DCOs today.
Right. There's one question, and I always expect a question on environment whenever we talk about mobility, and it is about the impact because of excessive use of lithium batteries, as it will cause a lot of mining and hence pollution remains a concern. I think Mr. Suneja is the best place to answer this because you are part or you work with the government. Do you look at this aspect as well of related impact of mining, etc., and how can that be mitigated?
See, at this point, I mean, goes without saying, and I mean, the person who's asked this question, I think they're also aware of this. Lithium mining at this point is very hazardous, and this would continue to be so as it progresses. At this point, even for a fact, this is kind of on that we're reaching that threshold where recycling of a battery is not yet as economical as producing a new battery. So point being that producing a new battery is far cheaper than actually recycling lithium. The only respite in this whole scheme of affairs is the fact that 98% of your batteries that we're using now is recyclable. So whatever that we're talking about at this stage is all recyclable, which was not the case in terms of a lead acid battery or the other batteries that we've used. These are high efficiency batteries. And even with this recycling, we're talking about a second life or a third life or multiple lives of the battery, which kind of takes care of, so the utilization of the battery, not just in the vehicle, but the asset per se as a whole is something that's being utilized. So when we look at it from a life cycle assessment perspective, with recycling and the utilization of the battery happening much farther, it's still some bit of a respite. However, at this point, unfortunately, in terms of mining, it would continue to be hazardous, at least for foreseeable future.
Right, and let's not forget that even when you use petrol or diesel, even extracting it from ground or refining it itself is also very, very polluting. So it's not like something is very, very clean and the other is unclean. Every industrial activity is unfortunately not very good to the environment. Even when we live, we are actually exhaling carbon dioxide, which is not very good for the environment. But we need to bring it down as much as possible. One last question, and this is the interesting one: how long will it take for electric vehicle to overtake ICE vehicles, or will ICE vehicles stay forever? So obviously in three-wheelers, we are seeing that EVs have or are beginning to overtake ICE, but I think the question is, when does it even become bigger? I hope that by the time next year, when we are having a discussion of this sort, EVs would have been at 80% or plus. But what are your thoughts? Are we ready to accept that ICE will begin to go in the backdrop and EVs are going to take over?
I can probably kickstart and sort of keep it brief and pass it on to the other panelists. I think the right way to look at it is from a perspective where all technologies would exist even for the next 20 or 30 years. I don't think electric vehicles would, because use cases as we speak about, or business models as we speak about, would be largely different. And this is not just in terms of ICE vehicles versus EVs. We have biofuels coming up. We have hydrogen fuel cells coming up. There's a huge potential that hydrogen fuel cells would actually prove far better than an electric truck. In a long haul hydrogen fuel run than an electric truck per se. All of this is being tested at this point. We don't know how the technology would shape. I think all of this is just based on innovation right now. The fuel efficiency, the vehicle efficiency at this point is at a level where all of these newer fuel technologies are expanding. It's slightly unintelligent, if I may use that term, to predict what would this fuel mix look like, but goes without saying that this fuel, whatever fuels available to run a vehicle would persist for at least not just near future, but actually for the next 3 or 4 decades? Sumant, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I forgot. Thank you, everybody. We stretched our time limit a bit for this because the questions started coming in. I think Abhishek has a call at 12, so he will need to drop out. Nivedita, all yours. Please take over and relieve me. Thank you.